Some stories were buried for a reason, but here we bring them back to life. Some stories are too chilling to forget. Some mysteries refuse to stay buried, and some secrets were never meant to be uncovered. Welcome to Trapped in the Unknown, where we dive deep into the darkest crimes, mysteries, and the unexplained. Are you ready to uncover the truth? Let's begin.
Imagine a life where the walls of your own home become a prison, where every day is a battle for survival, and the person you fear most is your own flesh and blood. This is the harrowing story of Chiyo Aizawa, a woman pushed beyond human limits, trapped in a nightmare that ended in a crime that shook Japan to its core. But was it truly murder, or an act of desperate liberation? Chiyo Aizawa was born in 1939 in Tochigi Prefecture, Japan. The eldest of 6 children, her life should have been filled with innocence and hope. But behind closed doors, darkness took root. Her father, Chiyo Aizawa, wasn't just strict, he was a monster in disguise. By the time Chiyo was 14, her childhood was stolen. Her father began abusing her in ways too horrifying to imagine. From the outside, the Aizawa home looked like any other. Neighbors saw a hard-working father, a quiet mother, and 6 children trying to make the best of life in post-war Japan. But walls can't scream. They can only hide the truth. Chiyo Aizawa wasn't just strict, he was more like a monster. Chiyo, the eldest, suffered the pain of his rage. Punishments started small. Missed meals, hours kneeling on rice grains. But cruelty doesn't stop. It escalates. What began as harsh discipline soon became something much darker, something no one could or would talk about. To the world, Chiyo Aizawa was a respectable man. He worked hard to provide for his family. But behind that facade, he was a master manipulator. He didn't just break Chiyo physically. He shattered her spirit, ensuring she felt powerless, trapped. He made her believe the abuse was her fault. People noticed things. A bruise here, a broken wrist there. Chiyo's once bright eyes, now hollow. The whispers started. Chiyo is too hard on his children. Chiyo is acting strange. But no one dared to intervene. In a society where family honor mattered more than individual suffering, silence became another weapon. Her mother, unable to bear the situation, left the family. Chiyo was left alone, a prisoner in her own home. She wasn't just a daughter anymore. Her father treated her like his wife. For the next 15 years, this became her reality. Throughout those long years, Chiyo gave birth to 5 children, all fathered by Chiyo. 2 of them died as infants. She endured multiple pregnancies, miscarriages, and even sterilization. Each day she woke up in a living nightmare, unable to escape. The world outside had no idea. In a society where honor and shame dictated silence, Chiyo's pain went unnoticed. For most mothers, a child is a symbol of hope. But for Chiyo, each pregnancy was a reminder of her prison. 5 children, all fathered by the man who should have protected her, not destroyed her. Chiyo wasn't just a victim. She was a mother, forced to bring life into a world that showed her none of its beauty. Imagine carrying a child, knowing the father is your tormentor. Imagine holding that child, unsure if you feel love or pain. For Chiyo, motherhood wasn't a blessing. It was a cruel, endless reminder of what was stolen from her. Her body broke down from the pregnancies, the abuse, the malnutrition. But the real wounds weren't the ones you could see. They were the ones that never healed, the ones that lived inside her, festering like an infection no one could see. By the time she was older, Chiyo's body couldn't take any more. Eventually, she was sterilized. Not for her safety, but because her father didn't want to deal with more problems. What kind of man looks at his own daughter and sees only an object? A possession? For Chiyo, even her body was no longer hers. She wasn't just trapped in her home, she was trapped inside herself. But then, something unexpected happened. Chiyo fell in love. After more than a decade of pain, Chiyo found something she never thought she'd feel again: kindness. A 22-year-old man, gentle and sincere, saw her, not as a victim, not as a broken woman, but as a person. He didn't look away from her pain. He reached for her hand, and for the first time, she dared to imagine a world beyond the one her father had created. But hope is dangerous when you live in a prison. Takeo noticed the change in Chiyo. He saw her smiles, her distant stares out the window. He saw her come back to life. And he wasn't going to let that happen. He didn't just control her body. He controlled her mind, her soul, her freedom. And when he realized he was losing that control, he acted. The threats came first, whispers in the night, promises of violence if she dared to leave. Then came the punishments, longer beatings, starvation, locking her away from her children. But the worst was yet to come. When pain wasn't enough to keep her in line, Takeo used the one thing Chiyo couldn't bear to lose: her children. He didn't just threaten to hurt them. He promised to kill them one by one if she ever tried to leave him for that young man. Imagine that for a moment. You're finally shown kindness. You're finally given a glimpse of a new life. And the cost of chasing it? The lives of your children. For Chiyo, the choice wasn't a choice at all. She sacrificed her own happiness, again, to protect the innocent lives her father never saw as anything more than leverage. The dream of freedom died as quickly as it came. The man who gave her hope disappeared, and she was left with nothing but the ashes of what could have been. After that, something in Chiyo broke. The hope that once flickered inside her was gone, snuffed out like a candle. She stopped dreaming of escape. She stopped believing anyone could save her. The prison walls weren't just physical anymore. They were inside her too. She belonged to her father, body and soul. Or at least, that's what he thought. But broken things can still be dangerous. For years, Chiyo endured the unthinkable. Every scream swallowed, every bruise hidden. Her body was battered, but it was her spirit that suffered the most. Each day she woke up not knowing if she'd survive the next. And worse, she feared for her children. That night, October 5th, 1968, wasn't like any other. Something inside her shifted. Maybe it was the way Takeo looked at her youngest child. Or perhaps it was the weight of over a decade of pain crashing down all at once. She didn't see him as her father anymore. He was a monster, a man who had stolen her childhood, her dignity, her future. And now she believed he would steal the lives of her children too. So, she made a decision. One that no one should ever have to face. As the house fell into an uneasy silence, Chiyo waited. Every tick of the clock echoed in her ears. She wasn't trembling anymore. When she heard his snoring from the next room, her heart didn't race. It slowed, steady, controlled. She walked to his bedside. He looked so different in his sleep, weak, powerless. The man who had terrorized her for years looked like nothing more than a shell of flesh and bone. But Chiyo didn't see weakness. she saw the source of her suffering. In one swift, final act, it was over. For the first time in years, the house was silent, truly silent. No footsteps stomping toward her, no cruel words echoing down the hallway. The weight that had crushed her for so long was gone. But what filled that space wasn't peace. It was something else, something heavier. Relief, guilt, fear. Was she free now? Or had she become the very monster she had feared? She didn't run, she didn't hide. When the police arrived, Chiyo didn't beg for mercy. She told them everything. The years of abuse, the children fathered by her own father, the terror she endured. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking for the truth to finally be heard. The case exploded across Japan. Under Japanese law at the time, parricide, the killing of a parent, was punishable by death or life imprisonment. But Chiyo wasn't a typical murderer. She was a victim. Her defense argued that she acted in self-defense after enduring unspeakable abuse. The public was divided. Was she a cold-blooded killer? Or a tragic survivor who had no other way out? Chiyo's trial wasn't just about her. It became something bigger. A battle between an outdated legal system and a woman who had survived the impossible. At first, the court seemed to recognize her suffering. They acquitted her. It was a rare moment of compassion in a society where victims of domestic abuse were often silenced. But justice wasn't ready to let go so easily. The case was appealed. The Tokyo High Court saw things differently. To them, murder was murder, no matter the reason. Chiyo wasn't a victim anymore. She was a killer. 3 years and 6 months. That was her sentence. For many, it felt like a second punishment, not for the crime, but for surviving her abuse. But this wasn't the end of Chiyo's story. In a final twist no one saw coming, the Supreme Court of Japan stepped in. And their decision didn't just change Chiyo's fate, it shook the entire legal system to its core. The court ruled that the harsh penalties for parricide, the act of killing a parent, violated the principle of equality before the law. Why should children who killed abusive parents suffer harsher sentences than someone who killed a stranger? It was a turning point, not just for Chiyo, but for countless others trapped in violent homes, silenced by fear and tradition. Her prison sentence was suspended. Chiyo walked free. But freedom wasn't just about walking outside the prison walls. She carried the weight of her past with her. And yet, she had done something no one else could. She forced the world to listen. Her case became a symbol, a painful, powerful reminder that justice isn't always black and white. It sparked debates in courtrooms, on the streets, and around dinner tables. It forced Japan to confront the uncomfortable truth that sometimes the victim becomes the accused. In 1995, the law that once condemned Chiyo, the outdated parricide law, was abolished. Her suffering wasn't in vain. Her voice, once silenced, reshaped the legal system itself. Chiyo Aizawa walked free. But freedom didn't erase the years of pain. The scars she carried weren't just physical. They were etched into her soul. She didn't ask to be a symbol of change. She didn't fight to be remembered. All she wanted was to protect her children and escape a nightmare. Yet her story became something more. It exposed a system that punished the desperate and protected the powerful. It forced Japan and the world to face a brutal truth. Sometimes the line between victim and criminal isn't so clear. What would you have done in Chiyo's place? Could you survive years of abuse, knowing no one would believe you? Would you wait for justice or take it into your own hands?
Chiyo's story ends with a broken system forced to change. But the question lingers. How many other stories like hers are still hidden behind closed doors? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, stories that make us question everything we think we know, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me here on Trapped in the Unknown, because there are still so many untold truths waiting to be uncovered. I'll see you in the next one.